that you might as well be in Russia watching the Russian television channel and getting the Russian newspapers every day, because that's the level of information you'll be getting if you follow that. Unfortunately, that's the country we live in Ireland at the moment.
The modern trans movement is using the LGBT community as a shield to push their radical agenda of mutilation, sterilization, and indoctrination of minors.
See any mention of the complex mental health issues associated with gender confusion. You won't hear that from the United Nations or the World Health Organization. They dismiss it, actually. They don't mention desistance. They don't mention detransitioning. And hence it's not in their documents, it's not in their standards. And then we're just following suit.
Speak up. Don't let any more children be harmed. Staying silent is not an option. Good morning, Eugene. How are you?
Morning, Jana. I'm great. How are you?
Great. We have a lot to cover today for anyone who's just tuning in to our weekly update. My name is Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council, and Eugene Garvin is a retired director of an engineering firm. And we have a lot to cover today. So Eugene, I'll turn it over to you to start going through all this information, starting with censorship.
Yeah, let's kick off with censorship. So this has been in the news, I guess. It's been in the mainstream news as well, which is no harm. Mark Zuckerberg coming clean that the Biden administration had basically requested or insisted that they engage in censorship during the COVID campaign. I think we all knew this. I think anybody who would have put up any controversial remarks with respect to COVID and vaccines, etc., during that time would have experienced this. So it's good that it's been clarified. It's not a conspiracy theory. It was going on, and he's come clean on it. And of course, we know this is happening. We know what's happening in Europe. There's legislation in Europe to censor stuff online that's active already. We're participating in it. Kinsen, that some former RTE employees were involved in this organization, again involved during the COVID period, getting paid 8,600 a month in terms of monitoring anything in the media, etc., social media and all of that. And now they've been picked up by Spotify, which I suppose has been what they were hoping to do at the end of the day, get acquired. So this was going on. Again, it was happening globally and it was happening locally. And it's not just for COVID, it's for other things, obviously, as well.
It was our public funds, that 8,600 a month, to pay Mark Little and Anya Kerr to make sure that our speech was censored in relation to COVID. And, I would actually point the fingers at these two as being, this censorship team stopped us getting information out, publishing even studies that came out on the COVID vaccine. Yeah. And we've seen what's come out since. And Ireland has over 20,000 excess deaths since April 2021. So I would blame some of these people for censoring information. Perhaps people didn't get information for informed consent. So they do have accountability here.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll cover it again because obviously a lot of information has come out since. Mm-hmm. And there was obviously the huge issue that, even the remarks regarding the Wuhan lab and all of that kind of thing. And we've seen it. We've seen it with the testimonies from Fauci and from Pfizer, what's been happening there. We've seen it with AstraZeneca, which we do need to cover in another video because there's a story there which, again, it's kind of outrageous that you were censoring stuff and then people have been harmed as a result because they didn't get all the information. But censorship is alive and well, and we're well aware of it. And there's another group here, our old friends, the World Economic Forum, were involved in the startup of this group called the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And it's always interesting. This is the double speak that these people use. They always talk about trying to protect you online and it's being responsible and everything like that, and they're in the censorship business. That's basically what they're in. So this group was set up focused on advertising, and that's one of the things online where the censorship stuff can have a real effect, because if it's linked to your advertising revenue, for example, it can have a big impact. And it was linked to X or to Twitter. So Elon Musk got involved because he wasn't pleased because X were losing a lot of money, potential advertising revenue due to these guys, their behavior, and they wanted to censor things and they were causing problems. So he effectively did sue them out of existence. So the good news is that they're gone.
over at the World Economic Forum and, over in Davos, one of the key themes for this year was how to stop misinformation and disinformation. And also, Simon Harris announced he's going to have a meeting, I believe it's happening in September, on basically censoring social media, because information is coming out that the establishments do not want to come out. They are terrified. That's why they're really trying to double down here. So that's a win when we see them doubling down, because it's a sign that the truth is out and they are losing.
Yeah, yeah. And you get these bodies that set themselves up as the kind of source of truth, universal source of truth. That's usually not the case. They're usually set up to basically police a particular narrative, which usually is a government narrative, or it could be a World Health Organization narrative or something like that, for example. And if you're not in line with that, it doesn't have to be the truth. If you might be saying the truth, but they don't want that out, so they keep you in line with the narrative. And that's a communist country. If you're in a country that's doing that, you might as well be in Russia, watching the Russian television channel and getting the Russian newspapers every day, because that's the level of information you'll be getting if you follow that. And unfortunately, that's the country we live in Ireland at the moment. We might as well live in Russia, apart from the fact that we do have social media, because that's the only means of getting true information. Now, there's lots of rubbish information as well, and I come across tweets that people say, "Oh, this thing here," and the minute just 2 checks online, and you'll find that it's false, or that it's old information or something like that. I have a Substack here from Chris Rufo. He talks about X in Brazil. Now, Brazil is always a troubled country politically, as we know, and they are clamping down basically on free speech in Brazil at the moment, unfortunately. So that's just, again, an example. So that brings us to gays against groomers. So, and the title I have here is Gay and Far Right. Far right, right? So if you do a search for gay against groomers online, the very top of the search box, you're going to see this thing, that Gays Against Groomers is an American far-right anti-LGBT organization. The far-right term obviously is just totally abused at the moment. It doesn't represent anything at the moment. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And there's a problem with that, because there is a real far-right, which is, really aggressive, quite violent organizations and people. And by just labeling everybody the same, that's just crazy. That's crying wolf. And the problem is, when the real far right come along, what are you going to call them? You're going to the same name as you're calling your grandmother who disagrees with, the kind of leftist agenda. So this is the problem. So Gays Against Groomers, this is funny, right? And it comes from Wikipedia. So the most of these little snippets come from Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is totally infiltrated with leftist thought. So here we go. They talk about sterilization, mutilization of minors. It's quite unambiguous. They're things we'd probably all resonate with, I guess. Now, they're quite aggressive, actually. They're probably more aggressive in their criticism than we would be, because they've an inside story as well.
Yes.
So they're talking about this mass-scale child abuse. I would say that's something I would have said from day one, since I heard about this whole thing. They're very upfront about it. They go to school board meetings, they present in front of congressional hearings, etc. There's YouTubes online. We'll have links to those that talk about it.
And it is child abuse. We've made that statement in many of our podcasts and tweets we've done, is what's happening in the schools and libraries under the definition of our very own Children First Act of 2015. It is state-sponsored child abuse.
Here they call it out. They describe gender ideology as this neo-religious cult, which kind of is. Well, it comes from queer theory, I guess, which we'll talk about later on. And it's biotechnological elements as well that go with it. And it's been pushed into our culture. It's been pushed at the very top level by very wealthy people, pushing it into institutions, putting it into the NGOs, including the United Nations and the World Health Organization, but also a lot of other NGOs, LGBTQ NGOs, that have taken over that organization. And they highlight that. They're highlighting this point. Now, they're not alone. There's the LGBT Alliance groups. There's an LGBT Alliance in Ireland. There's an LGBT Alliance in the UK. So Gays Against Groomers are calling this out. They've got The Dark Side of the Rainbow is one of their series of YouTubes. So take a look at that. And we'll play one of their YouTubes.
The modern trans movement is using the LGBT community as a shield to push their radical agenda of mutilation, sterilization, and indoctrination of minors And as a gay man who represents the organization Gays Against Groomers, I'm here to make it loud and clear. The LGBT community is sick of being used as a scapegoat for these destructive practices that are ruining kids' lives before they ever even had a fighting chance. For years, the LGBT community has fought valiantly for tolerance and acceptance in American society, and in the year 2023, we have achieved that. Now, all our progress is being erased because our community has been hijacked by trans terrorists. The LGBT community is being used like a Trojan horse by extremists in a death cult to ruin the future generation of our country by destroying their bodies, creating irreversible damage, and lifelong medical patients before these kids ever reach puberty. And make no mistake, the radical trans movement has become a death cult. Their most recent mantra is death before detransition. They're possessed by a sick obsession with bodily mutilation, self-harm, identity destruction, and pure hatred for anyone who dares to question this dangerous ideology.
The next one, I guess, is the updated guidance for schools in the UK, Jana. So this has been published now. People have been waiting for this for a while. I guess if you want to get a kind of a quick synopsis of it, get the GenSpec document. We'll have a link in the description to that. And there's the more detailed document, which we'll have as well, which is very comprehensive. It's a large document. It covers everything, right? So everything, all the normal safeguarding you would have in schools, not just the gender stuff. So there's a whole load of stuff in there. Talks about sexual abuse, which we've talked about recently with regard to the books in the library. And then it talks about, this is the section on gender confusion, I guess, with children, and in light of the Cass report. And I suppose the good news is they're kind of factoring in the Cass report here, and hence a word of caution in terms of, so the people should proceed with a cautious approach, not an affirmative approach, which people like Stonewall or Belong To or Tenny would be pushing, right? So they'd be pushing that you affirm the child, you use the new pronouns, the new name, they socially transition, all of that. So these guys are taking the Cass report into account and basically saying you should take a much more cautious approach.
An article was published by the Irish Times on April 10th, 2024. It was titled that the HSE is to consider the UK's Cass report on gender as part of their healthcare update informed by best evidence. Now, that was April. I have searched and I cannot find anything from the HSE since April. Now we're nearly 5 or 6 months on, and why are they dismissing the Cass report? Why are they not discussing it? Why are they not looking at all of the books in the schools and the practices in Ireland that have been proven to be dangerous and harmful and irreversible to our children here? So I call on the HSE to act quickly, and we'll be writing them a letter, with the Cass report request.
Well, I guess the answer to that question, Jana, is, and it's a question just for the entire government, Department of Education, NCCA, it applies to all of them.
Yep.
Right now, they're bought into the ideological approach from Tenny and Belong To, which mean they dismiss all of the things that are outlined here, such as the wider vulnerabilities it's called out here. Children having complex mental health problems, which may result in gender confusion, for example. They don't acknowledge any of that. They don't acknowledge detransitioning, desistance. None of this appears in any of the HSE literature. None of this appears in the curriculum information, because you won't see it on a Belong To website. You won't see it on a Tenny website.
Why is Health Minister Stephen Donnelly? Why is Education Minister Norma Foley? Why is Minister for Children Roderick O'Gorman putting the advice of trans right activist groups ahead of medical advice? Why?
Yeah, because the World Health Organization and the United Nations also do that. So you won't see any mention of these same things. You won't see any mention of the complex mental health issues associated with gender confusion. You won't hear that from the United Nations or the World Health Organization. They dismiss it, actually. They don't mention desistance. They don't mention detransitioning. And hence it's not in their documents. It's not in their standards. And then we're just following suit. So you can see there's a fundamental problem here. There's governments who don't accept that teaching. And thankfully, the UK seem to be taking a slightly different approach now, and they're taking a much more open approach, which our government need to do as well. So, and again, I come back to the point. Ask them why they're not talking about detransitioning. Ask them why they're not talking about the complex mental health issues that can result in a child being expressing gender confusion. Why do they not talk about desistance? They deny desistance, belong to actively deny that desistance ever occurs. So let's move on. The BMA, the British Medical Association. So they're controlled by a controlling group of 69 individuals. And that 69 individuals, the majority among that group, not the majority among the membership, the majority among the 69 have been casting doubts over the Cass report, basically, and saying we need to revisit the Cass report, we need to do our own study, etc. Now, this has created an absolute uproar within the body of the BMA. And, you know, the Cass report we've talked it up. It's fantastic what it's done. But they're getting huge pushback from the membership that, you know, the Cass report is definitive. We should be adopting it. We should be going with it. And I think we can see here that the 69 members have been infiltrated, and their majority appears to have been captured by agencies who wish to promote a certain agenda and a certain narrative associated with this. And the Cass report goes against that. Mm-hmm. And the good news is, I suppose, the members of the BMA are pushing back against it. And I think this is very positive. As of July, 1,500 doctors, you know, very senior people have pushed back. And people are saying they're going to leave the BMA. They're not going to go with it. They're not buying into it anymore. And I guess the important thing here, Jana, to highlight is I don't think this would have happened 3 years ago. Obviously, the Cass report, you know, in itself, the existence of the Cass report and its findings have brought people to a certain level of knowledge now that they didn't have 3 years ago. So it has been very significant in that regard. And I think the same thing needs to happen in this country when people are pushing certain things on top of you. We need to use the evidence of things like the Cass report to push back. And that applies in the school environment in particular.
Speak up. Don't let any more children be harmed. Staying silent is not an option.
Could do with having a kind of a similar response here if people are pushing against, you know, the findings of the Cass report, for example. First of our videos of the week, queer theory is the doctrine of a sex-based cult. James Lindsay covers this it's an hour and a half. But you need to listen to this. You need to understand what queer theory is. You need to understand what it's all about. And that book you referenced, Jana, it kind of takes this to another level. It brings it to another level. Another characteristic of a cult is they never want you to listen to or hear an alternative point of view that might go against the belief of the cult.
Yes.
And that's our mainstream media right now. Anybody who's outside the cult, you don't talk to them, you don't befriend them. That's the way cults operate. We see that behavior. We see that in our society, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's that one. That's that video. The next video is another interesting one. An interview on the Brendan O'Neill show, and Brendan O'Neill does a lot of very good interviews. Actually, they're well worth tuning into his podcast. And he does one here with Ian O'Doherty, talking about Ireland and the state of play in this country at the moment. And I guess this was in June, so we were in the throes of what was going on in Coolock and all these sort of things at that time. So Ian O'Doherty is a very frank, he's on the left, right? He sits on the left, but he's a very frank speaker, and he doesn't hesitate to speak out against things that he believes aren't right. Mm-hmm. He speaks out against the Catholic Church. That's fine. I'm a Catholic. That's fine, Ian. I respect your opinion. He speaks out against Islam quite aggressively, in a way any leftist would be uncomfortable with. So, and you'll find other video. There's another video of him doing a debate in Trinity on that very, very topic. He's totally against an aggressive religion like that, or ideology, effectively. In this one, he talks about the state of play in Ireland, and it's a very interesting discussion. It's about an hour long, well worth the listen. He's not driven by narrative, which I admire from Ian, because that's something that most people on the left are driven by a narrative. He isn't. He's not afraid to speak out, and he does speak his mind on this video. So have a listen to it. He says the same sort of people who would have been, rigidly, enforcing, Catholic teaching, etc., and lording it over everybody in the Catholic world. He said that same type of person is now doing the same thing in the woke world. The same sort of individual, the same attitude, approach, etc. It's really interesting. So I resonate with him, and I admire his honesty, and that's all I ask from somebody. I don't have to agree with everything he says and his beliefs, and I know he has no time for Catholicism, but I can admire his honesty, and I'll take that any day. So have a listen. It's a good interview. So talking about the truth, and this lady from Poland, this Polish MEP, basically gives it in the neck to Ursula von der Leyen. It's pretty. I've never seen something this strong and so forcefully. Ursula von der Leyen is literally sitting about 10 feet away from her. So she's pointing directly at her there.
This is a great feel good. This is a great feel good video. If anybody wants to just watch something to make you feel really happy and smile, this lady did just that for me.
Oh yeah. So wow, she really speaks for it. So I know Poland have been very tuned into the whole immigration thing, and they're basically saying we're not having it.
How can you not be ashamed of promoting the Migration Pact, which means that millions of women and children in Europe feel endangered, threatened on the streets of their cities? You are responsible for every rape, every violent attack, every tragedy caused by illegal migrants, because you are inviting them to come to Europe. And for what you're doing, you should actually go to prison and not to the European Commission.
So the next one on the Ursula von der Leyen theme, there's a channel here. I guess it's not just this YouTube, but there's a channel from this guy. The name of the channel is Martin Decoder. Now I don't know what his real second name is. That's the name of the channel, and he's a speech analyst, and he interprets how people speak, and also their mannerisms and all of that kind of thing. The whole, so he kind of he's the person who could detect, if you're lying or if you're trying to hide something or whatever. So he does these analysis of public figures, Kamala Harris, Justin Trudeau, usually people who are lying in some way. And again, he's done this analysis of Ursula von der Leyen. So you can, that's a good follow-up to the other video. You can listen to this one.
Eugene, I'm a qualified life and business coach and an NLP practitioner, and I did a little bit of analysis when I was watching Micheál Martin talk about the bike shed. My, oh my, that said it all. And then at the very end, the one thing I noticed, he walked and then he just started running. So that obviously was a very uncomfortable moment for Micheál Martin, talking about the infamous bike shed.
Oh, yeah. So the website of the week, New Discourse's website, which is James Lindsay's website. It's a huge website now. It's got an awful lot of resources in it. And we've already touched on a few of the things that he covers. He covers queer theory, he covers communism, / woke ideology extensively. And he covers it in all its contexts. So there's a lot of stuff now. He's got these bullet videos, which are well worth watching. These are the shorter ones. Now, he does refer to something here. You'll see it, this thing about Canadian bedrooms. So this is a story we should keep an eye on. Right now, there's campaigns in Canada for people to give up spare bedrooms, like, older couples or, somebody living alone, to give up their bedrooms in their house to migrants. Now, it's an optional kind of campaign at the moment, but there's a fear that it's going to be mandated. So essentially somebody's going to come in and say, well, you're living in a house with 3 bedrooms. You're only occupying one of the bedrooms. There's 2 free bedrooms. Can't we put migrants in there?
Yep. Well, it's no secret to the people in Ireland. For people who aren't aware of this, you can look it up yourself. I did a town hall 2 years ago on the proposed 39th Amendment to housing, and that amendment was tabled by no one other than Richard Boyd Barrett and Paul Murphy, and their Marxist and communist views, to delimit the right to private property for the greater good. And it also had for the greater good of all residents, not even citizens of Ireland, but residents. Let's hope that never happens. But anyone listening can look that up for themselves. 39th Amendment to Housing, Paul Murphy, Richard Boyd Barrett. This is where it's going.
Yeah, that's communism. Out and out. we'll watch these stories. So James Lindsay is really good. He's an atheist. So just in case people think this guy is he's a Catholic or religious, zealot or something, he's an atheist, an out and out atheist, and he says it.
It comes down to what we're standing up against is the sexualization and indoctrination of children, the breakdown of society. So no matter where you sit on the religious or political spectrum, try to see it through the moral and the common sense lens. And there's some things that we can agree on with, people who are atheist or people who even are on the left. It's about common sense and morals. So that's what we need to bring back.
He's just trying to find the truth. Not interested in a political agenda, be it one side or the other side. He's not a pro-Trump person or anything like that. He'll just give it as it is, and he'll analyze. He's read extensively, so he's gone through an awful lot of this material. So, and that he relays it. And sometimes he does 3 or 4 videos on the same topic because he finds a better way of presenting the same thing and maybe doing it a bit shorter or whatever. So you'll see, multiple videos on the same topic. But he's covering some very controversial ground, very important ground here. And that thing in Canada, we need to keep an eye out for that. Because
and it's all about the truth and facts, and everything that we present, Eugene, we always back it up to articles, to references. We take a very evidence-based approach. Of course, we'll give our opinion and use our own common sense and logic, but very evidence-based, factual approach, because the last thing we want to do is have people, question the integrity of the work that we do. We back everything up with facts and truth. And if you speak the truth, you can't go wrong.
So the last thing is the book of the week, The Marxification of Education. It's very topical. So it talks about it. Social emotional learning, critical race theory is coming to our schools, as we know. Queer theory is already there. Radical gender theory is already there. Comprehensive sexuality education is already there. So this book is well worth a read. James Lindsay is a very prodigious. He produces a lot of material on YouTube, which I would recommend, but sometimes you need a book as well to pull the stuff together, and this is one of the books that's worth looking at. And if you never knew who Paulo Freire was, you need to know who he is, because he's the person stealing education from your child in the schools and will be in the forthcoming primary curriculum if it's not stopped and changed.
So just to thank everyone for watching, all of the links to all of the articles and material are in the video description. Please do like the video, share it with everyone you know, give us a comment on the video, feedback. That will also help us beat the shadow banning and the algorithms. So we will have another podcast coming out in a few days. And for anyone that missed the last few, some are really well worth a watch regarding the back to school refresher, the secrecy pact, the third parties invading school, and then of course the story time for the Irish Mommy series, 2-minute clips. I've been getting great feedback from parents who are sending those 2-minute videos to their school teachers or to other parents in their school WhatsApp groups to really, get people aware of what's happening. And then if you want to do a deeper dive and see what's happening, corruption of the Irish education on our YouTube channel. So we will produce as much content as possible. If you want to cover any stories or do a deeper dive into anything, please do email us at info@naturalwomenscouncil.ie. So I think that's it for today.
Yeah, thanks everybody.